Tony is perplexed to see things that once belonged to his dad displayed in an art gallery by Stane. Jean spots a Chinese artifact and almost slips his tongue into taking Mandarin's name. He rephrases and says it belongs to his ancestors. Just then, Stane walks in. He is without his bodyguards and is smiling. Tony is irritated to see him and goes to tell him off when Stane asks him to leave or duck, just as he takes out a gun and points it at Tony. He then shifts his target and starts destroying all the artifacts on display. The three friends hide behind armor, and Jean finds a spot behind the wall. Tony can't let Stane destroy the things which once belonged to his dad, so he confronts Stane. Just then, the guards come. They are baffled to see Stane holding a gun and ask him to drop his weapon. Stane does as told but then takes care of the three with his bare hands. Once the three guards are knocked out of their consciousness, he turns to Tony and acknowledges seeing him again before leaving. The next day after school, Tony can't wait to hear about Stane's meltdown, but nothing is on the news. Rhodey thinks Stane covered it up with the money. Tony still can't figure out why Stane went to those extremes, and that too without any witnesses. To find answers, Tony approaches Whitney but doesn't get any answers. He gets told off by her that he is boring. Rhodey suggests he takes the direct approach. That night Tony wears his Iron Man armor and goes to Stark International. He finds Stane in his office. To protect his privacy, he has taken extreme measures like soundproofing the windows. He seems a little paranoid. Iron Man uses his lip-reading mechanism to understand what Stane is saying. He manages to understand Stane talking about an attack on the garage. Tony isn't sure which garage he is talking about. Rhodey pitches in and gets access to Stark's external security systems. He soon finds the garage where the alarm is going off. The garage is a private garage Stane is using. Iron Man reaches the garage and finds Stane walking out with a rocket launcher. Tony is baffled and wonders if Stane has a good twin brother since he is the evil one. He confronts the imposter Stane and asks him to drop the rocket launcher, but the imposter scans Iron Man from the lasers he emits through his eyes and suddenly shapeshifts into Iron Man. He then fires a rocket at Iron Man, sending him flying. Iron Man soon regains his composure and attacks the imposter with his repulsor beam, knocking the weapon from the imposter's hands. The imposter reverts back to her original self. It turns out to be a woman wearing an alien-looking mask. She doesn't give up so easily and takes out a handgun to shoot at Iron Man before fleeing. The gun shoots a huge laser that is so powerful that it creates a hole in the concrete road. Iron Man manages to pull himself up and looks for the woman, but she is long gone. The next day, Rhodey wakes Tony up by throwing the newspaper on his face. Apparently, when Tony was sleeping, Iron Man went on a spree destroying public property. He is now a wanted criminal. During class, Tony is sweating liters thinking the police will barge through the door any moment until Rhodey reminds him that nobody knows that he is Iron Man and adds a sarcastic "genius" after the sentence. This provides Tony with some respite. To figure out who was behind the incident, Rhodey searches the armor's database, and finds that it has been scanned by a mask that originally belonged to Stark International. Tony's dad created it. The mask enabled the wearer to scan anybody and create a hologram of the person scanned around the wearer. They can even mimic the voice. The only way to clear Iron Man's name is to find the masked woman. Iron Man ventures out to find her but soon gets surrounded by the police. To make it worse, Stane has provided police with weapons to hunt him down. Iron Man runs from there, and a cat-and-mouse chase ensues. Iron Man takes a chance and stops to talk to them and convince them, but the police fire a localized EMP dart to cut out his propulsion systems. Iron Man falls from several feet on a truck. Rhodey thinks Tony can't outrun them, but Tony has a plan. The police surround the truck waiting for Iron Man to come out. Iron Man blasts the door and then runs using the electrostatic energy racers. But Rhodey calls them roller skates, and Pepper says they are embarrassing. He should just let the police catch him. But Iron Man escapes and even avoids an attack from a tank when he activates his propulsion in the nick of time and avoids getting hit. Stane is beyond furious. He provided all the weapons needed to catch Iron Man, but the police still failed. Just then, Whitney walks into his office, asking him how he's holding up after his art gallery was destroyed. But Stane yells at her, telling her that half the technology has been stolen from the vault, the company board is losing trust in him, and Iron Man is making a fool out of him, worrying about something as trivial as the art gallery is least of his concerns. He then walks away, saying he doesn't have time for Whitney or her petty problems. That evening Whitney sits in front of her dressing table sobbing. She is determined to get rid of Stane's belongings so he can make up time for her. This includes Iron Man. She then colors her hair dark and wears a mask revealing she was the masked woman all along. Iron Man is still on the lookout. Pepper and Rhodey help him by tracing news through police scanners. They soon hear a sighting of Iron Man, and Tony rushes to the scene. He ends up in a secluded place with empty rail coaches. Suddenly the masked woman attacks Iron Man. Iron Man resists attacking her, but when the masked woman uses all her weapons against Iron Man without holding back, Iron Man finally attacks her with his repulsor beam. But she ambushes Iron Man and holds him at gunpoint. Before she can shoot, the police surround them. The masked woman attacks the cavalry with a bomb that envelopes them with static black energy. She then disguises herself as their chief, and pushes the button to take the police personnel down in one go. Iron Man suddenly appears behind her and punches her, knocking her down. She shapeshifts to all the people she pretended to be before turning back to herself. Iron Man reveals that it was her who committed all those crimes. Just then, a police helicopter comes and attacks the masked woman, but she runs until she loses her balance and finds herself hanging for her life. The mask comes off. Iron Man rushes to save her, but when he sees it is Whitney, he decides to escape with her. He couldn't let a friend get arrested. Whitney reveals she did this just so her father would pay attention to her. Iron Man lets go of her with a warning, and she thanks him for his kindness. Tony soon comes back to the lab, looking upset. He tells Rhodey and Pepper that his name has been cleared but lies that the masked woman got away and he never got to see who was behind the mask. Back at school, Whitney looks melancholic. While Pepper and Rhodey take jibes at her, Tony asks them to stop. He knows what Whitney might be going through. So he sits beside her just to let her know she is not alone. At Pegasus, Anton Harkov gives orders to Delphi to apply the nanobots to the test machine, a mini helicopter. He then activates the nanobots and asks them to take control of the machine. But the nanobots don't respond to the command, leading to total system failure. Anton throws away the mini helicopter in frustration. Just then, Stane arrives with his security and picks up the broken helicopter. He greets Anton and offers to help. Upon asking what he's doing there, Stane confesses he has had an eye on him and his project, Pegasus, for quite some time now. But the funding for the project is stopped. Stane then shares his real intention behind approaching him. He wants Iron Man, and for that, he needs Crimson Dynamo. In turn, he promises that Stark International will fund his Nanite project and anything else he wants. Anton readily agrees. At Tomorrow Academy, the students watch Happy, the star athlete, show his prowess. He is also the captain of the school's basketball team. Tony is curious to know why the audience is so quiet and not cheering. Rhodey tells him their mascot got kidnapped by the rival school team, a tradition. But to his bafflement, Tony doesn't know what a mascot is. Tony soon decides he's done with the boredom and wants to enjoy himself. So he heads back to his lab. Rhodey accompanies him and is surprised to see so many gadgets Tony has collected. He is trying to recreate all the tech weapons he has come across from the enemies he has fought, and have integrated some in the Iron Man armor so he is better prepared. Soon Pepper arrives wearing the mascot costume. She stole back their school's mascot costume and the rival team's mascot costume. The rival school's mascot boy had flu, so Pepper took the opportunity and stole it. She also toilet papered their school to add a little more spice to their rivalry, along with many other inexplicable things. Suddenly the alarm starts blaring. Since their system is connected with police and fire channels, they get an alert every time there is a call. A part of the subway tunnel collapsed, and a train is stuck inside with passengers still on board. Iron Man soon reaches the site but is confused to see the train is empty. Suddenly Crimson Dynamo appears behind him and attacks him. Rhodey gasps when he hears Crimson Dynamo's name. They think it is Ivan, but it is Stane's security in charge, O'Brien, wearing the suit. He attacks Iron Man, and they soon blast their way out from the subway into the middle of the city. Iron Man has to get Crimson Dynamo away from people, but before he can do anything, Crimson Dynamo fires a missile at Iron Man, putting his system in critical condition. Tony's heart implants reserves start depleting as Crimson Dynamo keeps attacking Iron Man. The system initiates the primary protocol, and the suit starts returning to the armory. But Crimson Dynamo doesn't give Iron Man a chance to escape. His constant attacks knock Tony out, but he sees O'Brien's face before passing out. Stane gets furious as Crimson Dynamo has attracted public attention. He wanted to get Iron Man discreetly, but now the damage has been done. He asks O'Brien to bring back Iron Man before the police arrive. Rhodey desperately tries to contact Tony, but he cannot as the armor's battery is off. Rhodey slams his fists on the machine, and it does the trick. The connection is re-established as 3% battery is still left. Tony now lies unconscious in the armor, surrounded by Stane and Anton. Rhodey tries the armor's remote control systems, but the remote systems are damaged. Rhodey knows if they open the armor, Tony's heart will fail, so he tries initiating an emergency armor lockdown. Thankfully it works. Stane is not ready to put even a single scratch on the armor. He orders Anton to do a deep scan analysis of it. Anton is irked by Stane commanding him and showing no respect. To this, Stane replies that he put thousands of lives at risk, and he didn't want that. He doesn't want his footprints to be discovered in this incident. He leaves after ordering O'Brien to guard Iron Man during the scan and also mentions that Stark International is putting Crimson Dynamo armor into mass production. Tony soon gains consciousness and panics when he can't move. Rhodey calms him down and updates him on the information. He also tells him that Anton was behind sending Crimson Dynamo after him and not Ivan. Rhodey and Pepper have devised a plan to get Iron Man out of there. Pepper sits in a cab outside the Pegasus, wearing the mascot costume. She sneezes as she has also caught the flu. Talking about karma, Pepper enters the facility and switches the main power off. After 2 seconds, the reserve power activates. Anton believes something is wrong and starts to leave to see, but O'Brien asks him to stay. He wears the Crimson Dynamo armor and goes out to see what is wrong. Iron Man takes the opportunity and escapes. He rescues Pepper, who is still in the costume. Stane is beyond furious, especially when he is told a bear helped Iron Man escape. Back at the lab, Tony is steaming up. He is upset by Anton's betrayal, and he can't let Stane have all the data they have collected on his armor. So he decides to go back, but this time in a new armor he has prepared. This new armor looks hefty and resembles Crimson Dynamo. Rhodey doesn't approve of it. They start bickering, but Pepper's sneeze distracts them. Tony suddenly comes up with an idea. He calls it Technivore. It is an upgrade of a virus he used to burn out Mr. Fix's system. If he can get the virus inside Pegasus and upload it to their computer, it should destroy any data on Iron Man and prevent it from reaching Stane. He tells them that Pegasus operates on a closed network called Delphi. The virus can't spread beyond the facility. Hearing this puts Rhodey's nerves at ease. Iron Man reaches Pegasus in his new armor and delivers the virus. The security alert compels O'Brien to put on the Crimson Dynamo suit and confront Iron Man. They still are unaware of Iron Man's virus scheme. Crimson Dynamo and Iron Man fight and destroy half of Pegasus with their hefty armor. Soon Anton shrieks when Delphi gives out a foreign invasion alert, and soon all of Anton's research, along with data on Iron Man, gets erased. Where Crimson Dynamo seemed to have the upper hand in the fight, suddenly stops working after Delphi goes down. Iron Man gives a chance to O'Brien to eject from the suit, and then using his uni-beam, he fires at Crimson Dynamo, destroying such a dangerous creation. Stane soon gets a message alerting him of transfer failure. Gritting his teeth, Stane tells Anton that his offer is rescinded. Tony and Rhodey are back at the school's basketball game. Tony is happy after defeating Crimson Dynamo, but Rhodey warns him not to get ahead of himself. He says he saw a dark side of Tony when he was so focused on taking revenge. He reminds him that a thin line separates him from the bad guys he fights, and with Tony's attitude change, Rhodey feels he's close to crossing that line. Tony and Rhodey stare at each other. At Pegasus, no data remains. As a last resort to save itself, Delphi uses the nanobots and covers the mini-helicopter to become an entity whose scream echoes in Pegasus. Tony and Jean have hired a helicopter for a trip to a glacier. The pilot has no idea what he's doing there, but because he was paid handsomely, he doesn't mind waiting in the cold while Tony and Jean slide down the crevasse and almost fall off the edge into the deep fracture but somehow manage to save themselves by landing near an ice cave. The cave leads to another ancient temple they had been searching for. Suddenly the ice stalactites start falling, and the bridge connecting the cave to the temple starts receding. Jean and Tony run towards the entrance of the temple and barely make it in before the door of the temple shuts down. The adventure makes them laugh before they get up to look at their surroundings. Jean says the temple resembles the Temple of Wisdom. Soon they see a similar-looking tile with a Chinese character that translates to courage. Jean walks close to it, but the rings around his neck start vibrating along with the things around him. Just then, the tile twists and the floor opens, revealing a stone sculpture without any definite features. Jean wonders how to activate the statue, so the test begins because taking the rings without the test renders them useless. He spots a weapon lying nearby and picks it up, wondering if it would help activate the statue. But Tony stops him and says weapons never solve a problem, they only create more, something his dad used to say. With that, he takes the weapon from Jean's hands and throws it away, and adds that instead of blindly fighting like last time, they should look before they leap. They walk into another chamber and find the ring floating on a dais. Tony grabs the ring and soon after returns. He is back at his lab being shouted at by Rhodey. Rhodey is upset because Tony didn't have the courtesy to tell them where he was, and now they come to know that he had gone to Greenland, the next temple's location, along with Jean, and didn't inform them. They had helped him with the research and finding the next location, and this is what they got in return. In his defense, Tony says he couldn't risk Rhodey and Pepper's life like last time, and he only took Jean because he can read Chinese. Rhodey finally calms down, thinking his friend has safely returned with the ring, which he should be happy about. Now that things have settled, Tony says he can analyze the ring and find out what makes the ring set off and why Mandarin is after them. Jean is in his hideout, fretting about the ring. He plans to pass the test of virtue on his own to activate the ring and then take it from Tony disguised as Mandarin. His stepfather mocks him from his cell, where he is kept captive. He questions Jean's capabilities as Mandarin because he still doesn't have the ring. Vexed by his father's derisive attitude, Jean wears the 2 rings he possesses and becomes Mandarin. He then returns to the temple, determined to pass the test. He uses the weapon he initially intended to and jams it on the statue. The outer strata break into several pieces, revealing a robotic machine inside. The robot activates, and Mandarin is ready to face it. But to his surprise, the robot walks away and doesn't heed Mandarin, who shouts after it to face him even after Mandarin strikes it with his sword. Mandarin tries one more time and uses his ring to stop the machine, but the machine punches Mandarin out of its way and continues walking. Mandarin suspects the robot is going to retrieve the ring and therefore heading toward Tony. Meanwhile, Tony is heading back to the armory after school. Pepper calls him from behind, and they soon start talking. Tony tells her Rhodey is already in the armory studying the ring. She is curious to know if the statues will come after Tony like last time, but Tony dismisses her thought and says he never activated the test, so they should be fine. Just then, they hear heavy footsteps making the whole area tremble, and soon the giant robot comes into visibility. Tony is flabbergasted by the sheer size of the machine compared to what he had seen in the temple. He suddenly remembers the ring is with Rhodey in the armory. As they plan to call Rhodey to warn him, Rhodey walks up to them and asks what is happening. They explain the situation to him, and luckily he has brought the ring with him, as he didn't want it to be lying unguarded. Soon the Defense Authority takes charge and sends jets that fire missiles at the machinery, but to their horror, the machinery grows even bigger after being hit. It soon spots the ring glowing in Rhodey's hand and starts approaching him. Rhodey is adamant about helping, so he takes Pepper with him to distract the giant, buying time for Tony to change into Iron Man. But before they can run, the robot reaches there and tries to intimidate them to get the ring. Rhodey notices that the robot is not hurting or destroying things, but Pepper keeps tugging Rhodey, fearing the robot might eliminate them. Soon the machinery ambushes the two and corners them, but it gets punched, and Pepper calls out to Iron Man. To their surprise, it is not Iron Man but Mandarin that attacked the machine, consequently saving them. Mandarin then turns to Rhodey and asks for the ring, but Rhodey refuses to part ways with it. He charges at them, but Iron Man arrives, tackling Mandarin away from Rhodey and Pepper. Iron Man then flies towards Rhodey and Pepper and carries them to safety. Together they try to figure out what the test of courage is, as fighting against the robot is only making it stronger. Rhodey suggests that giving the ring back is also a way of showing courage. So Iron Man takes the ring from Rhodey and flies to face the robot. He then tosses the ring at the robot, which it catches. Nothing goes as expected, but quite the opposite. The robot is more furious than ever and shoots lasers from his eyes, directly hitting Iron Man with them. In retaliation, Iron Man uses his unibeam to fire at the robot, but the robot absorbs the energy and grows even bigger. Rhodey and Pepper connect with Iron Man's communication system and put their heads together to figure out how to stop this machinery. Rhodey recalls when he had the ring, the robot never attacked him but just reached out to him. They suspect the robot only attacks those with weapons. Iron Man is confused. He says he doesn't have a weapon, yet the machine keeps attacking him. Rhodey reminds him that his whole suit is a weapon. Rhodey surmises that true courage is probably putting the weapons down. With no more ideas on how to stop the robot, Iron Man thinks of giving it a try. He lands on the ground and shuts off the system. The robot is about to attack Iron Man, but suddenly it starts shrinking, and their plan works. After it is back to its original size, the robot opens his fist and presents the ring to Iron Man. Iron Man thanks his dad for the words of wisdom he once spoke about weapons. He walks towards the robot to take the ring, but before he can do so, Mandarin appears out of nowhere and attacks Iron Man, hurling him several feet away. Mandarin snatches the ring and wears it. Just as Iron Man is about to attack him, Mandarin uses the ring's power and traps Iron Man in a liquid that Iron Man can't seem to get out of. Mandarin then controls the liquid to control Iron Man. Not ready to give up, Iron Man diverts all his energy to motors and reaches out for the ring, but soon a blast takes place, and Iron Man is catapulted into the air before he lands on the ground. The Mandarin escapes with the rings. We see a chakra symbol appear on the robot's head. Back at the armory, Tony feels like a failure. Pepper tries to cheer him up, while Rhodey says that as he is worried about their safety, they are also worried about Tony every time he fights the villains. So they have a better chance of winning if they stick together. Tony agrees, and they make up for all the times Tony has excluded them from his plans. Back in the hideout, Jean looks at the new addition, and interprets the courage as fearing nothing. While the stepfather, in his cell, suddenly opens his eyes and smirks. Amidst spells of thundering, Iron Man locks horns with Whiplash. Pepper is perplexed by the fact that Rhodey is not at all concerned about Tony, but Rhodey says they need to have faith in Tony. He might be a spoiled brat when he's with them, but when he wears the armor, he changes into a responsible human being. We are then taken 2 hours back when Tony is still in the armory playing video games to pass the time as his artificial heart gets charged. Rhodey looks at the mess Tony has created and asks if he is fine. Tony says he is not because there are people out there wanting to hurt him. Because of that, Rhodey and Pepper's lives are also put at stake. So he has been up all night trying to understand the villain tech, and now he is going to use it against them. This will allow him to stay ahead of the villains and protect the people and his friends. Just then, Pepper walks in, complaining about being banned from her dad's office. They then witness the changes Tony has made to the Iron Man armor, and as soon as it reboots, the system gives a message about power signature detection. Upon further inspection, they find out the power signature is that of Whiplash. He is moving throughout the city. Against Rhodey's concerns, Tony takes the armor to face Whiplash, and in the present, the two are having a face-off. With an upgraded Iron Man armor and the new extensions in Whiplash's armor, they both end up creating a huge crater as they fall to the ground after significantly damaging each other's armor. Iron Man's armor stalls and shuts down completely. Tony manages to make it back to his lab, where Rhodey suggests he charge his artificial heart as it was out of power by the time he was done fighting. Tony agrees to do so and soon leaves to rest back at his home. Pepper and Rhodey follow after switching off the power and locking the armory. Seconds after they leave, the system starts, and the Iron Man armor activates with a target to find Tony Stark. Back at his house, Tony is sleeping when his desktop computer activates, and the camera scans the sleeping Tony for authentication. At the same time, Iron Man's armor activates and sits up on its own. The next day at school, the three friends sit on the terrace of the school building and discuss what could have led the armor to seize up. Pepper is worried that Happy, who is sleeping nearby, might hear them, and their secret will be exposed, but Tony is not as concerned about him as he is about Pepper, who has sent him 37 messages about the conversation they are about to have next. At the same time, the system keeps a vigil on them, and now that Pepper's name has come up, it keeps her on the radar. After school, Tony and Rhodey go to the armory to figure out the problem. The data on the computer looks corrupted, and Tony can't understand how the armor is working absolutely fine. As they are doing so, Rhodey touches the armor but gets electrocuted. He pulls his hand away, but nothing happens when Tony touches it. At that moment, the system gives a warning signal and alerts them of Whiplash's presence nearby. Rhodey doesn't feel it would be safe for Tony to face the enemy when the armor is creating such a problem. Tony, however, convinces Rhodey that finding Mr. Fix is of utmost priority. He soon wears his armor and ventures out to fight Whiplash. Elsewhere, Mr. Fix is not happy with Iron Man defeating Whiplash. He gives Whiplash one last upgrade where his whips can now detach. Once detached, they will explode. Unbeknownst to them, Iron Man is outside their lab in his invisible shield listening to everything. Suddenly the armor detects the threat and initiates the attack mode. Tony loses control over the armor and asks if Rhodey did something. Rhodey says he didn't, as he had lost connection with the armor for a few seconds. The armor starts moving on its own and enters the lab to eliminate the threat. Mr. Fix and Whiplash are astonished to see Iron Man there. Mr. Fix orders Whiplash to finish off Iron Man. Even as Tony tries to command emergency override, the armor disregards all the instructions and starts attacking Whiplash. The armor is somehow impenetrable and easily takes down Whiplash even as Whiplash uses the detachable whips, but Iron Man creates a shield around himself and sends the whips flying back at Whiplash, taking him down. When Mr. Fix tries to tackle Iron Man, he nullifies all his attacks and grabs Mr. Fix by his neck. He then takes hold of Mr. Fix's cybernetic arm and rips it off from his real arm. Now totally defenseless, he pleads for his life. Tony is shocked at how dangerous his creation has become. He helplessly watches as if nothing is working to gain control of the armor back. The armor then points its propellers toward the main system and blasts it, spreading the fire all over the building. After the threat is neutralized, the armor returns. As soon as he reaches the armory, a traumatized Tony cries to take the armor off of him. Once out, he runs to his computer and initiates armor lockdown, but the system shows an error. They are discussing what could have gone wrong when Tony gets a text from Pepper saying she wants to meet him. Rhodey asks him to go, till then, he'll tear down the armor. The minute Tony leaves, Iron Man armor gets up and takes Rhodey by his shoulder, confirming him to be the enemy and prepared to use its uni-beam on him. Tony goes back to his house and calls Pepper, but soon finds out she never texted him. He puts one and one together and realizes the system must have done it to get him away from Rhodey. Tony warns Pepper not to come to the armory and runs back. Once in the armory, he finds Rhodey lying unconscious. The armor greets him. Tony is confused at first, thinking someone has taken control of the armor, but when the armor identifies itself as the original unit, Tony realizes that the experimental tech upgrades and the damage from facing whiplash somehow caused the armor's programming to gain sentience. Tony asks why it hurt Rhodey, to which the armor shows him the video where Rhodey talks about tearing down the armor, which the armor took as a threat to its unit. The armor then intimidates Tony by reminding Tony of his duties towards his creation. The system has reached the conclusion that the biggest threat to Tony is Tony himself because he indulges in threatening missions. The armor grabs Tony by the arm and announces Tony will be safe inside the unit, so he will be contained within the unit indefinitely. Tony tries to run away, but the armor follows him. The armor warns him not to resist as he has given the armor overriding control. Tony uses his artificial heart's charging cord and uses it at its maximum power to subdue the armor. Meanwhile, Rhodey gains consciousness and uses a spare armor hand to disable the armor using the propellers. The armor retaliates and fires the propeller before Rhodey can. Tony puts himself in front of Rhodey and takes a direct hit on his artificial heart. He lies limp as Rhodey rushes toward Tony. In the meantime, Pepper arrives too and rushes by Tony's side. Tony's heart soon gives up. With whatever power it's left, the armor protects Tony and makes his heart beat again before crashing. Once things settle down, Tony and his friends discuss rewriting the chip so this never happens again, but they cannot deny the fact that the armor sacrificed itself to save Tony. Tony is appreciative of his armor, it is always protecting him. The scene opens with FBI Special Agent Vigil Potts slamming his way into a dark room. After securing the location, he reports that the international criminal Moses Magnum has arrived in New York with the package and has made contact with the evilest mad scientists ever to walk the earth, the Advanced Idea Mechanics. Unbeknownst to him, his daughter Pepper is spying on him, wearing a high-tech suit that allows her to stick on any surface and enable night vision. Rhodey, however, is not convinced, and true enough, Pepper had made her erratic mind run amok while sharing the incident. In reality, Vigil had just left his door open while he was on his phone, and she overheard him talking about Moses Magnum. Meanwhile, Tony is scanning Advanced Idea Mechanics for any signs of Magnum. Just then, he gets attacked by someone wearing a Panther-like suit. Iron Man initially takes his opponent lightly, but then the Panther suit-clad man is able to do severe damage to the suit just with his claws. Suddenly a flying ship appears, intervening in their fight, and starts attacking Iron Man. The ship belongs to Advanced Idea Mechanics, and the man flying the ship reports back to his superior about Iron Man's presence. The superior instructs to abort the meeting and inform Magnum of the change of location. Iron Man is able to bug the ship before it retreats. Back at the armory, Rhodey is baffled to see how deep the claws have embedded into the armor. Tony is sure that Advanced Idea Mechanics will try to set up another meeting with Magnum, and they need to find them before the transaction is made. So while Rhodey and Pepper attend school, Tony wears stealth armor and chases the Advanced Idea Mechanics ship with the invisible cloak on. Iron Man hacks into Advanced Idea Mechanics system and learns they will rendezvous with Magnum in 10 minutes. Just as he is getting close to the ship, Iron Man's armor system alerts him of a bad kitty detected. Iron Man spots the Panther man chasing the ship and thinks he is Magnum. So Iron Man seizes the opportunity and attacks Panther Man. Even though Iron Man is invisible, Panther Man sniffs him out and evades all the attacks. He doesn't stop to fight Iron Man and continues chasing the ship. The ship senses energy discharge from the building top and finds Panther Man. The Advanced Idea Mechanics personnel then directs its weapon toward Panther Man and starts firing at him. Panther Man is surprised to hear Iron Man calling him Magnum, but before he can say anything, the ship starts firing at Panther Man, and he loses his balance, as a result of which he falls off the building. Iron Man is confused and soon realizes Panther Man is not Magnum. He jumps into action and flies after Panther Man to save him from becoming a pulp. Back at the armory, Pepper and Rhodey are talking when Iron Man arrives, and to their surprise, he has brought an unconscious Panther man along. Elsewhere, the supreme leader of Advanced Idea Mechanics is furious that their second attempt to meet Magnum was thwarted. The Supreme orders to call off the meeting against his subordinator's wishes to get the medal for the MODOK harness. The Supreme later meets Magnum through a virtual meeting, and he is fuming at the delay. He wants the transaction to happen soon as he is being pursued from Africa. Meanwhile, in the armory, Pepper and Rhodey cannot believe Tony has brought the Panther man into their secret place. In his defense, Tony says that the man was attacked by Advanced Idea Mechanics, making it clear that he is not the enemy. Tony continues saying that he also feels guilty because Advanced Idea Mechanics spotted Panther Man and attacked him because Iron Man used his propellers, otherwise, they wouldn't have spotted him. Pepper is curious to know why the man is dressed as a cat. Rhodey corrects her and says he is not a cat but a panther. He remembers the guy at Advanced Idea Mechanics saying Wakanda, which is a tiny nation in Africa. The nation hasn't had any contact with the world in years, and the king of Wakanda is called the Black Panther, which is a ceremonial title. Rhodey then walks to his gyroscope and looks up the information while telling Tony and Pepper that a few weeks ago, there was an attempted invasion, and a group of mercenaries had eliminated King Chaka. Pepper points out that it doesn't make any sense as the Panther is only a year older than them. Suddenly, the Black Panther appears before them and attacks them, but then stops and says he is the king, and he doesn't want them to interfere in his mission. Moses Magnum has stolen something sacred to Wakanda, and it is his responsibility to return it. Pepper proposes they work together, but Black Panther doesn't trust outsiders as they have only brought pain to his people. He threatens to reveal Tony's identity as Iron Man if he tries to interfere. After Black Panther is gone, Rhodey goes back to his gyroscope and searches for the Black Panther as his face looks familiar. They land upon an article about the Prince of Wakanda coming to study. His name is T'Challa. They now understand that after Wakanda's invasion and the passing away of the king, T'Challa has become the new king, and he has come after the man who eliminated his father. Tony's friends cannot help getting surprised by the similarities T'Challa and Tony's life story has. Just then, the system intimates them of Advanced Idea Mechanics' conversation regarding Magnum. The message is from the Advanced Idea Mechanics ship Tony had bugged. The three listen intently to the Advanced Idea Mechanics people's conversation with Magnum about being tracked. They speculate the Vibranium he stole gives off a unique signature. The Advanced Idea Mechanics Supreme thinks it can be used to deal with both the Black Panther and Iron Man. Iron Man chooses to risk his identity to stop Magnum. While he tries to locate the drone, he explains to Pepper and Rhodey that Vibranium is a rare metal that absorbs kinetic energy, vibrations mainly, and it can store and redirect the energy, making it very powerful. Suddenly a surge of energy from over the bridge catches Iron Man's attention. While on the bridge, Black Panther has already taken out some of Advanced Idea Mechanics members. He challenges Magnum to come out and face him. Magnum gets down from his car and is guarded by Advanced Idea Mechanics members who quickly subdue Black Panther using their specialized beams that are pumping vibrational energy into the vibranium metal of his suit that will turn him into a living bomb. In the nick of the moment, Iron Man arrives there and overturns Magnum's car. He then uses his propellers at one of the members, rendering the others to stop shooting the beams at Black Panther. Iron Man helps Black Panther up, who asks him to get away as he might explode at any minute. Iron Man suggests he release the kinetic energy by physically siphoning it off. He can do it by hitting something insinuating, targeting the Advanced Idea Mechanics tanks and members. Black Panther takes down the fleet and in turn stabilizes his armor. Magnum manages to pull himself out of the overturned vehicle but soon faces Black Panther, who has planned a Wakanda justice for Magnum. At that moment, he remembers the Vibranium and thinks that he has lost it to Advanced Idea Mechanics, but he is surprised when Iron Man shows him the metal. He had secured it before anybody could take it. Iron Man empathizes with Black Panther, who thinks he has failed as a king because he had to resort to help, but Iron Man makes him understand that he doesn't have to go through this alone. Black Panther realizes keeping Wakanda isolated has done more harm than protected. If they had asked for help, his father would not have perished. He wonders if, as a king, he needs to change the convention. Iron Man extends his hand of friendship, but Black Panther is still reluctant and asks him not to get ahead of himself as he is just thinking of these things. Black Panther then leaves, and Iron Man shouts, "You're welcome," mocking him for not being grateful that he saved Black Panther's life. Arthur, the living laser, is surprised to see his mom, who mocks him for having no ambition. Suddenly, another masked man called the Magia appears and says he cannot do anything. Just then, Iron Man also says he feels sad for him because he can't think of anything better to do with his life. The three faces mock the living laser, who can't take it anymore, and he screams as his powers go berserk. Once back to his senses, Living Laser finds himself trapped inside a spaceship. Confused with a distorted sense of reality, Living Laser makes one last attempt to get out and uses his power, which leads to shooting a strong beam of laser from the ship to the Earth. Once it hits an island on the Earth, a huge crater is formed, and Living Laser finds himself in the middle of the crater amid melting rocks. He realizes how powerful he has become. Meanwhile, the scientists on SHIELD orbital station release a distress code, but it fails to go as Living Laser had fried the system on his way out. Suddenly Living Laser appears back on the station and takes control of it. He forces the scientists to assist him, declaring he will hold the whole world hostage. The two scientists ask him what his demands are, to which Living Laser seems confused. They elaborate and ask him what he wants in exchange. Still unable to determine, he starts hearing mocking voices and is reminded of Iron Man. With a sinister look, he says he knows who he wants. Back at the armory, Pepper and Rhodey find Tony dancing to music. As soon as he sees them laughing, he stops and shyly says he is working. He then shows them the chip that goes into the brain to replace cell phones. Suddenly Pepper gets a call from her father, and after the call, she warns Tony to stay put. They switch on the TV and find news about Living Laser spreading like wildfire. They forecast the status of the space orbit, which now stands as a weapon in the hands of Living Laser. Pepper tells him that SHIELD called the FBI an hour ago asking for Iron Man, and if he doesn't get what he wants, he will destroy New York just as he destroyed the island. Tony knows nobody can stop him except for Iron Man, so he gets into a specialized armor that will help him get to space. As Iron Man is in midair, a ship blocks his way. The man on the ship asks Iron Man to come along as General Nick Fury, the director of SHIELD, has demanded his presence to talk about Living Laser. Iron Man is then escorted to helicarrier. Once on board, he meets Nick Fury, who is not happy with Iron Man's interference. Now that Iron Man is on board, they can ensure he doesn't meddle in their business of taking down Living Laser. Fury orders his men in spaceships to get the scientists out and take the laser down. Iron Man is astonished to find that Fury is sending people up into space and putting their lives at risk. Just then, his men point their guns at him, and Fury is quick to remind him both he and Living Laser are under his jurisdiction. Iron Man tries to convince him that Living Laser is dangerous. He wields tremendous powers, and Iron Man barely survived fighting him. But Fury remains adamant. Only when Living Laser destroys all his ships in seconds does he understands he underestimated Living Laser. Iron Man takes things in his hands and leaves the ship to stop Living Laser. Iron Man reaches the orbit space station against Fury's wishes and soon finds the two scientists locked in the control room. He assures them not to worry but gets attacked by Living Laser, who appears behind him. Iron Man uses his unibeam and alters the frequency to match Living Laser's, the same as he did the last time he defeated him, but Living Laser has figured that out. He keeps changing his frequency so he doesn't get affected by the unibeam. Living Laser repeatedly attacks Iron Man, bringing Iron Man's shielding capacity down to 40%. Pepper and Rhodey plead with Iron Man to get out of there, but Iron Man reminds them that people's lives are at stake. Just then, Fury hacks into Iron Man's communication system and asks him to stop wasting time and get out with the scientists because in the next 20 minutes, the telescope on the orbit space station will be in the range of New York City and Living Laser will be able to fire on a city with millions of people and he can't allow that to happen. If Iron Man can't take down Living Laser before that, Fury will destroy the station. Iron Man is perplexed, thinking that Fury is ready to sacrifice his own people. Fury clarifies that SHIELD agents knew the risks as the station is full of explosives enough to pulverize it. Just then, Iron Man gets attacked by Living Laser again, prompting Iron Man's armor to release a security alert. Iron Man tries to talk to Living Laser, calling him by his real name, but nothing affects him. Trying one last time, Iron Man uses his propellers against Living Laser but ends up making a hole in the station which pulls everything out in space along with Iron Man. With 90 seconds of oxygen remaining, Iron Man desperately tries to find a way into the station, and just when he is about to pass out because of lack of oxygen, he manages to enter and close the airlock. The two scientists mock him for his lousy job saving them. Iron Man catches his breath and tells them about the mirror he used to deflect Living Laser during their fight moments before he burnt a hole in the station, and the mirror got sucked out into space. One of the scientists remembers another mirror they use inside the telescope that collects energy from space. He suspects that's what must have pulled Living Laser in. They go to the control room, but Living Laser follows them and knocks the two scientists down before he attacks Iron Man. Pepper advises Iron Man to mock him so he loses his sense of judgment in anger. And it plays out exactly as planned. Living Laser gets into the telescope, and Iron Man attaches his armor to override shield systems and recalibrate telescope optics to turn the telescope into a prison which living laser cannot escape as he is deflected from all the mirrors. Iron Man connects to Fury and asks him not to blow up the station, and Fury takes a jibe at Iron Man, telling him he was seconds close to being destroyed with the station. Living Laser is captured in a specialized prison on helicarrier, and Fury warns Iron Man to stay out of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s way, or else they'll take him down. Iron Man returns to the armory and is greeted by his worried friends. After they leave, Tony stares at the Iron Man suit that he wore that day and almost lost his life in space.